So welcome everyone. Thank you for attending today. My name is Zenny Whitall. I work in the CU Boulder College of Arts and Sciences recruitment office. We're very excited to share and talk about the possibilities and opportunities of graduate programs at CU Boulder with you today. There's already this bidirectional partnership, this connection between CU Boulder and Fort Lewis with some of our graduates and some of your graduates and the experiences that they're having. We look forward to strengthening this partnership over the years to come. On a personal note, I do have to share, I'm very excited today to be able to work back with my alma mater. From living in Snyder B my first year to receiving my BA in Psych and managing Magpies after graduation. I'm very fond of the time I spent down at the fort and in Durango. So today we've divided the program into 3 sections. And our panelists and colleagues will be sharing their experiences and journeys with us as we go through. There will be time at the end to ask and answer any questions. If you have questions, please put them in the chat if you have access, or at the end, we can always ask those out loud or put them in the chat there in person. So to go ahead and start off here, the program is broken down into these academic journeys, what to know, and how to plan. Academic journeys, Dr. Schneider, who's there with you in person at the fort, will be sharing her experience as a CU Boulder graduate student and then going on and working there at the fort and what her experience has been. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Schneider, and all of this that you want to share.
Sure, thank you for the introduction. And I'll keep it short because I think we can, if there's specific questions from audience members or later on in the program. But yeah, my journey, I'm a first generation college student. I attended undergrad in my hometown, and it was really the impact of mentors that I had as an undergraduate that launched me into my next steps in my master's and then my PhD. So that sort of background where I came from, like really depending a lot on the influence of mentors in my life, has carried through and made me desire to be that person for others. So I'm excited for the potential and for the capacity of mentoring my current students here at Fort Lewis, setting them on their path to graduate school, getting them connected to faculty that I'm in contact with at CU Boulder, things like that. So this picture that I have on the slide, I think there's some text missing from the slide, but there's me in, I guess the second one from the right, and 3 of my mentors in my graduate program. And then the silhouette on the right was supposed to symbolize, yeah, there we go. I think maybe 1 or 2 more clicks. We'll get, yeah, it's looking, there we go. And so as you can see, the silhouette on the right of the slide here is supposed to symbolize the next generation of folks that I'm excited to mentor. And again, my story, I absolutely would not have even made it into a master's program if not for the mentors in my undergraduate, and specifically people who invited me into the research that they were doing, the books that they were writing, the museum collections that they were asking permission to include images of in their texts. And so that's the kind of thing I'm most excited inviting students on board in my own classes, showing them the level of research that they can do as undergraduates, setting them up for seeing themselves as researchers in their graduate careers. So I'll end there, and I can talk about specific steps that I took to pursue my graduate work in the next sections of the program.
Hey, Zenny, I think you're muted. Sorry.
Thanks, Jack. I appreciate that. I always forget that in Zoom. So the next section of the program, what to know. The purpose of the program today is really we're looking to help demystify, debunk any misconceptions of what it takes to get to graduate school and what graduate school is there for you to do. I have colleagues and current graduate students here today to kind of give their experiences. First, we're going to talk on funding and what they've been able to access. So Caitlin Davis and Natasha Mayal are here to share their experience as graduate students. And then I have some of our representatives from faculty members in departments. And then also Jack Kroll is here representing our graduate admissions office. So Caitlin or Natasha, if you'd like to go ahead and share your experiences as a graduate student.
I can start, and then Caitlin, whenever you want to chime in. I think from my experience, I decided to pursue a master's first before a PhD. And so with master's programs, not all of them are fully funded. There are some out there that are. So, you know, the way that I went about it was I connected with faculty members first that I wanted to work with at the schools I was applying to. And then from there, you know, when I was deciding on what, you know, master's program I wanted to go to first, the faculty member that I ended up working with for my master's, he wanted to know what other offers I was getting. And so I sent him those offers and he was able to negotiate me a better package. So I share that because that can happen in graduate programs. Like faculty members will go to bat for you and get you better funding offers if they really want you to come. So I just shared that, and I'll stop because I want Caitlin to be able to share too. So that was my experience just doing a master's program, which was 2 years.
Thanks, Natasha. So yeah, my experience was I also did a master's first before a PhD, but they were both at the University of Colorado. And since my degree is in anthropology, at the time they had a internal re-enrollment. So if you did the master's there and then decided to go on to the PhD, it was a streamlined process. And so because I was in that program, they did have funding for the master's. That is definitely something important to check with programs, is who has funding and who doesn't. As far as sources of funding, I'm in year 7 total of grad school. So I've had 4 years of the PhD, and then I had my master's program was a 3-year program. And so I had 3 years of TA or teaching assistant funding. I had 3 years of research assistant funding, and then 1 year where my current year where I taught my own class, and then had a dissertation completion fellowship. So what I would recommend as far as funding is funding sources are definitely out there. It is nice, depending on what job you think you might want to have, to sometimes you can get a mix of teaching and research experience. And as Natasha said, talk to your potential programs about funding options. And then one other thing I would say is that the FAFSA, which many of you are probably familiar with from undergrad, where you have to submit your families or your own financial info to the universities, that is worth doing still, even in grad school. So for myself, I submit the FAFSA every year to CU. And because of my income bracket, just being, you know, on graduate student income, I qualify for fee waivers. So all the graduate student fees, like the, you know, bus passes and the campus fees and stuff, get waived every year. So there definitely are little programs like that that can be open to you, and some scholarships as well through completing the FAFSA and kind of going through the scholarship programs for your grad school as well.
Thank you both. You know, that's something that we really just want to have that shared out here, is that there are many, many different pathways and opportunities to fund your education. Arturo or Andy, do you have any comments from the department side that you'd like to share? Funding wise?
Yeah, first I want to really acknowledge what Natasha and Caitlin, Caitlin said. Yeah, so typically, you know, I do workshops. I'm a first gen, I'm light skinned. My grandma was, you know, pretty much full blooded indigenous, and I also have some African. I'm from Mexico City originally, but pretty much what I always tell undergraduates is, if you don't have like a perfect GPA or done some really amazing honors thesis or done some research, so if your GPA is in like the 3.0-ish area, think about getting a master's. And a master's is actually, students are in shock when I say this, is actually a lot easier and funner than undergrad, because a master's, you're actually doing something that you're actually really interested in. As an undergrad, you have to take all of these classes usually that you're not that interested in, just because you have to fulfill, organic chemistry or whatever requirement you might need to fulfill. Whereas a master's, it's you only do 3 classes a semester usually. There's seminars, and if you have good faculty mentors, it's really fun, and it's just a really great kind of growth experience. And you're right, the funding is not that great at the master's. Typically, most top tier PhD programs have to offer competitive funding packages in order to recruit to students. So the strategy that you outlined, Natasha, was brilliant. I mean, that's what I always suggest to students who are thinking about, applying, and especially for us who are first gen. It's kind of a big deal to think beyond, just to get to college is a big deal, and think beyond that. It's like, even like, wow, but yeah, master's is a lot easier. PhD gets more intense because you end up having to then, start developing your own body of research. For us in ethnic studies, Natasha's a really amazing doctoral student in the program. We only accept applications from students that already have a master's. And so that sets us apart from some of the other PhD programs in ethnic studies. And so for any of the students that will tune into this later or listen to later, just feel free and reach out. We so far have had 100% placement in terms of our students. I don't know if any of you have taken any of the classes at Fort Lewis College yet with Dr. Grant, Deanne Grant. She's one of our really illustrious and amazing recent PhD doctoral students who's now faculty there, her alma mater as well, and is just really enjoying working with specifically the Native American Indigenous community, especially women. And so anyway, yeah, feel free to reach out. My name is Arturo Aldama, or just Google Ethnic Studies CU Boulder, shoot me an email, and we can talk further. But yeah, master's is a great route to go. But if you have a really high GPA, you're doing really interesting cutting edge stuff, go ahead and try to apply for a PhD program. That's what I did back in the day. And you get a master's, it's called an accelerated master's, and you get like a full funding package. So, but, it just kind of depends on, just talk to mentors and advisors and try to get the best advice possible. But it's a great thing to go beyond a BA, to have an MA or MEd or PhD after your name. It's a really, really amazing thing. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Arturo. I'm going to move to the next slide just because I think we're naturally transitioning into that next section here. But Sarah, Andy, please feel free to jump in. Caitlin, Natasha, if you can speak to the student experience of what the community is like. I think for me, when I was talking to Dr. Hernandez about this program to come down to the fort and share graduate opportunities at CU Boulder, a big thing that popped into my mind is how much I loved the personability of the fort. Down at FLC, it's a small community. Like, I used to run into my professors daily down in Main Street, right? And so I know, looking at CU Boulder, when you're looking at in total enrollment, there's 30,000 some odd students across CU Boulder. It can feel very overwhelming of the size. Am I going to know people? But I think that's more so the undergraduate experience. Can you speak to kind of the smaller, more personal nature that you've noticed in the graduate programs? Does that work? And Natasha, if you want to go first again, that'd be great.
Sure, yeah. So I went to a small liberal arts college for undergrad. So I benefited from a close community of mentors, and I sort of didn't know at the time like what community meant until I left that institution. And so I say that because, as a graduate student, you may end up at like an R1 institution, which is significantly bigger than Fort Lewis. And for me, at both institutions, I was at the University of Kansas and now I'm at CU Boulder. It does take more work to make your own community, right? So you have your community within your department that naturally forms. You have a cohort of students that you spend time with. And then you have like your advisor and your committee that you work with as your community, that you develop those relationships over the number of years that you're there. But I always found it really sort of fruitful to try to get to know the community outside of the university at both institutions I was at. I would actually recommend that to grad students, is to try to get to know the community that you're living in, because you are, like, establishing roots there, potentially, how long you're going to stay. And I think it does help create some, what's the word, like relationships outside of the institution, but then also being able to like meet with other people that aren't affiliated with the university. So you get to know the community, and you're not necessarily always talking about school all the time, which I think is huge in graduate school. Like, you need to just have a life outside of the institution, and getting to know the community is one way to do that. And then I will say, like, through classes and if your work is interdisciplinary, you're going to probably end up taking courses in other departments. And so your community expands with other graduate students and faculty that are outside of, your home department. And so I think through the work that you're interested in, you craft that community as you progress in your program.
Great. Thanks, Natasha. And yeah, I definitely want to echo Natasha's point on building community outside of the university, because you are making this place a home for a couple of years if it's a master's, maybe longer if it's the PhD. And so a couple things that I've done to help feel more a part of, the town and the area was, a lot of towns have recreational sports leagues if you're into something like that, dodgeball, kickball, softball. Also, volunteering is a great way to feel a part of the community and to feel a part of a family too. So I've helped out at the food pantry, one of the food pantries in Boulder. And so community-wise, definitely build community in your town or in your neighborhood as well. And then one big difference, at least from where I came from in undergrad to my particular program in grad school, was my undergrad program had just a lot of already planned community events that the university put on. So you just had to show up. You didn't have to do the planning. And I have found that in grad school, you do have to seek the community a bit more than you would in undergrad, but it's definitely there if you seek it, whether it be outside or inside your program. And then as far as the type of community to look for with an advisor, or at least one that's been helpful for me, it was surprising to me going from undergrad to grad school how much different it can be from your undergrad advisor to your graduate advisor. So for me, my undergrad advisor mostly was just helping me make sure that I graduated on time and did the courses I needed to take. Whereas in grad school, it is a lot more about they're helping you grow as a researcher and as a professional. And so definitely make sure that you find someone or a group, because sometimes an advisor retires or something like that, that not only has research that interests you and work that you want to learn about, but also that is someone kind of personality and learning style wise that you get along well with, because you are going to be working together a lot.
And Caitlin, thank you. Natasha, thank you. That's the perfect transition, kind of moving into this next slide, really speaking about graduate school and that unique what you bring to it aspect. And I don't know if anybody wants to share, kind of open this up of experiences for like colleagues that you still are in touch with from your graduate programs, if you're a professor now, but then also that when you were coming to find your unique research niche where you were going to focus your grad program, your studies, talking about a mentor and having that graduate advisor and how they're a lot different than an undergraduate advisor. That undergraduate advisor saying you have 120 credits, here's how we're going to break it up, these are the required, this is what goes. Whereas a grad advisor, it seems more you're into an experience of like, whoa, who are you? What are you excited about? What do you want to know? And it seems to be a more personal experience. But anybody, Sarah, Andy, Arturo, Rebecca, if you want to, Rebecca, you're raising your hand, you want to go for it?
I intentionally left my opening comments vague, so I wanted to be able to kind of fluidly jump in where the conversation led. I would love to speak to this question of something that differentiated my mentor in undergrad from my master's. And I'll piggyback off of the comments about getting the master's before the PhD, especially as someone who maybe didn't have a great undergrad GPA or have that family experience of knowing what to do in grad school. So I went to a small private liberal arts undergrad college as well, and I got to know my professors really well. And one of my undergraduate mentors allowed me to see myself as a researcher. I hadn't yet defined the field or the specific area that I wanted to continue that work, but I at least started to see myself as a researcher through one of the independent projects that undergraduate mentor invited me on board with. There was a book project he was working on, and he gave me way more responsibility than I thought I deserved as a sophomore in undergrad. When I went into my master's program, my advisor at that stage of the game was recommending conferences that I should apply to, was recommending the sort of subset of the field that he saw my work responding to most specifically. And when it came time to applying to PhD programs, this is a mentor that I talk, both of these people I'm talking about, I communicate with at least on a monthly basis. So we're still very much in conversation. But at the master's level, that mentor, when it was time to apply to graduate programs, we scoured the list of my dream schools, and we narrowed it down to places where he knew people and he had personal relationships with faculty at the schools that I ended up applying to. Not that necessarily gave me a cutting edge, but like Arturo was saying, these were people that I felt more comfortable reaching out to for information because my master's advisor already had that personal relationship with individuals at the programs. And that blew my mind that I could email a professor, a faculty at a school I was interested in applying to, and possibly expect a response because of the intermediary of the mentor that I had in my master's program. So to give a bit of a different perspective, or to show the difference in what I gained from my mentor in undergrad versus at the master's level.
No, that's great. I appreciate that. And it's, again, I think we're doing a good job of perfectly having our comments land us to our next areas. And so the how to plan part of it is, and this is what I believe Rebecca was just speaking to, is, working with the faculty that you know at the Fort, but then also reaching out to those graduate programs that you're interested in. And if the professors can speak to how you would feel about an unapplied random undergrad reaching out to you, asking questions about your program. If you can speak to that, Sarah, Andy. Yeah. And either one, Sarah or Andy, go first. I guess what I'm asking is, like, how do you think of it, or how would you experience it if some random undergraduate reached out to you and said, hey, I'm kind of interested in doing a PhD or a master's at your school. Can you tell me about it? Is that something that you would welcome, or is that something that you're like, no, we're up here too high, you can't talk to us yet? I don't know, Sarah, if you want to speak to that.
Well, first, I get these emails all the time. I get them very frequently, and of course, I welcome them. I didn't know any better when I applied to grad school. I had no idea you were supposed to reach out to the faculty before you applied. I didn't know what I was doing, but that is certainly advice that I would give, is if you're interested in a program or a person or their research, reach out to them. And especially if you do a bit of homework and you look at some of their publications and you have a sense of what their research is like, and you can say, I read your publication on such and such, and it was really interesting, and it made me start thinking about these topics. That would be an incredibly welcome email. But we want people to apply to our programs, and we want to have a diversity of applicants that we can choose from. So it's in our best interest to be encouraging as many people to be interested as possible, and to encourage people to apply.
So yeah, I would just reinforce that from my perspective, and especially students who are first generation or Indigenous students. We don't have tons of applicants at CU, so we would love to have more of them. And in fact, students come and just visit during the summer and drop by. And as the director of the Center for Native and Indigenous Studies here at CU, I'm always really happy to see those students and arrange a meeting with them. You know, it really makes us think the student is serious and it's potentially someone who's actually going to come. So definitely do that. I will say, however, don't feel like, oh, you know, if I don't know a faculty member there or I can't go to the campus, I shouldn't apply, because that's not true either. We're not going to write you off because we didn't meet you or because, you know, we don't know your advisor. It is a very open admissions process, and certainly you can just do an email or something like that. So just don't be intimidated. Reach out any way you can. And even the one simple email with a couple questions is always great.
Arturo, did you have a comment you wanted to share?
Yeah, no, this is really, really important. And again, you know, for first-gen students, I just really want to emphasize that, you know, getting a master's or a PhD, a master's for sure is really, really fun. And it'll be a lot easier, frankly, especially if you get funding than undergrad, because you're doing smaller, more in-depth classes about things you actually really, really care about, right? And hopefully you'll have a really amazing, you know, group of faculty that you feel safe with, that they trust and respect you, and that will encourage you to kind of keep growing into your own kind of research and scholarly pursuits, right? And so one thing I will share, you know, as a first-gen student myself, growing up in a trailer park and the whole nine, for me, when I was at Berkeley on a full ride, I felt really, 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 really guilty, like just phenomenally guilty, because of all the kids I grew up with or in jail or dead or whatever, right? So one of the ways it kind of helped me survive Berkeley was I needed to kind of give back to the community. And so I had like 3 little side hustles basically, but you know, I didn't do it for money at all. And in fact, I worked beyond it, specifically mentoring students of color, reaching out, doing community engagement stuff. And so that, you know, I find is really, really important. So some of the comments that were made earlier about building community, it's really, really important. And it helps you kind of grow and survive grad school. Because otherwise you just get so in your head all the time. You're just thinking about theories and seminars and stuff like that, that you kind of, to have that kind of balance, I think it's really, really important and needed. So.
Thank you. You know, and Jack, if I can throw it to you a little bit on graduate admissions. I know requirements are so different from different departments, different programs and whatnot, but just in general, if you can speak to like how you figure out if you need a GRE, if you need a GMAT, whatever. And I think similar, I wanted to add one comment before Jack shares requirements and contacting his office. Something I think is a theme that I've noticed everyone speaking to today is with a graduate program, if you make that, it doesn't have to be a fully finite decision in your mind that I'm going to go to grad school. It can just be, I'm interested. Remember that in a lot of ways, you are interviewing the program just as much as the program's interviewing you, right? Because it could be, sure, US News and World Report ranks it as the #1 in the world for whatever, but is the community around it right for you? Is the actual areas right for you? You know, when you're sending out those kind of, let's say, scouting emails, have you gotten the response that you're looking for? As far as someone who's like, ooh, I'm interested in what you're interested in. Yeah, come to my program and we can totally explore that. We'll publish some good papers, win a Nobel Prize. It's not a big deal. And we'll do that. And there's some humor. But Jack, if you want to go ahead and speak to the grad admissions office, that'd be great.
Sure. Thanks, Eddie. And it's a pleasure to be here. And hopefully folks get some good stuff out of this. You know, we started the graduate admissions team back in 2018 at CU. And one of the first things we did is we went around to the various departments across campus that would take the time to meet with us. And we talked to them about what is it that you were really looking for in graduate students? Because you can Google and you can look online and see, you know, the department usually has a couple paragraphs about what they're looking for in an admission decision and what they're basing their decision off of. But when you get down and you actually start talking to faculty members, you might learn that a certain element of the application is more focused on than another area. So programs and we're seeing a lot of programs move away from GRE scores. So don't necessarily be intimidated by the fact that a program requires GRE. I think it's a totally valid question to ask. If there is a GRE requirement, like how much is this playing into the decision? Other programs and departments we've met with weight GPA more than other factors. And then even for some, the background in research as an undergraduate can really become a paramount decision. I think looking at arts and humanities, what we have found is that a lot of times students will go on to get that master's degree before applying to PhD programs. But one of the myths that we see out there in the students that we meet with and we talk to is they feel like that just because they don't have a master's degree, they can't apply directly to PhD programs. And if you really are an outstanding undergraduate student, you've done the research, you've got good GRE scores, you've got, if the program even requires GRE, and you've got a great GPA, you might be leaving something on the table by not applying to a PhD program. The other thing that I'll say is we really encourage departments to do this if they are open to it. And this is a question I would encourage every student to ask as they go through the admissions process for graduate programs, is say, hey, I'm really interested in your PhD program, but if I'm not admitted, would you consider my application for your master's program? And that's something that many departments are beginning to do. And it really helps facilitate and help students land in the right fit. We actually have a student ambassador, a graduate student ambassador that works with the admissions office. And she did exactly that. She applied to the PhD program here at CU in her given field, and then worked with them to actually accept an admission offer to their master's program. And surprisingly enough, she even did receive funding for that master's program. She's now close to wrapping up her master's course of studies with the department that she's in, and is actually looking to do her PhD. So to echo everything that's been said before as well, is really reach out, engage with the programs that you're interested, ask some of these questions. And if you ever have any questions or you want to meet with someone from our office, we'd be happy to equip you with some of these questions to ask along the way. And you can always just reach us at cugrad@colorado.edu. And with that, I'll kick it back over to you, Zenny.
Thanks, Jack. That's great. And I love that last part Jack just said is reach out to a grad recruitment office or a department of what are the questions that I should be asking you. And in some ways, even if it's not the program that you're going to apply to or be admitted to, you've just armed yourself with a great resource that you could be using for other programs, right? Of like, oh, CU said I should be asking this, so I'm going to ask it to some other program. But just a great resource there. So we've kind of come to the end of the formal structure of our program, but I wanted to open it up and just leave it out there for anyone to add in any last thoughts, feelings, ideas, advice, suggestions for how to look for a grad program, how to apply to a grad program. And, one thing I want to put out there is, and let me know if any of you felt this as you were applying to your programs. I know I was a victim of this, but when I was looking at a grad program, I was like, well, I can't apply to grad school until I know exactly what I'm going to study and how I'm going to be the expert in that field across everything. And then I realized, oh, it's actually, that's what I'm going to discover in the program. So I don't know if anybody kind of wants to speak to that. Natasha, Caitlin, if that was a thought that went through your heads as you were applying to programs.
Well, I was going to add on just a little bit more about research. Because that was helpful for me as an undergraduate student. So I participated in the American Indian Science and Engineering Society, and through their yearly conference, they have like the largest career fair in Indian country. And so I didn't even know what graduate school was. I didn't know what research really was until I went to this career fair, and I was introduced to all these graduate schools and research opportunities. And I graduated with a bachelor's in American Indian Studies and Environmental Studies. So I would consider myself a social in the social sciences, but through these research opportunities that were, I guess, more in the natural sciences, I figured out when I was an undergrad what I liked and did not like about research. So I think I would encourage, if you're thinking about graduate school and you want to do like your own independent research, whether that's in a lab or, you know, doing community-based work, right, is to try to apply to research programs that are like for the summer, right? And so you can get that experience of doing your own research, working, you know, in some of these programs. I was, you know, I spent the summer at, you know, one program, I spent the summer at Michigan State, right? So I got a chance to see what it was like living at a large university for a summer and working with faculty in their labs. And so I would say that, you know, two of the ones that I did that were influential for me was the Summer Research Opportunities Program, which is run by the Big Ten universities, and that's actually open to the social sciences as well. So you don't have to be like in a science field to do a research opportunity like that. And then another one that I did is a research experience for undergraduates, and that's run by the NSF. So those were two that were helpful for me to like figure out, okay, I like this and I didn't like that. And then when I was applying for graduate school, I had a little bit, you know, of a better idea of what I wanted to do. But I will say that, like, you know, ideas change, like you change as a person, like you don't have to be like stuck to one idea. You can explore other things, and so don't let that sort of you know, hold you back or think that, you know, you can't change once you get there or grow in that way. So I'll just add that about research.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Natasha. Yeah, I echo everything that Natasha said. I think that, one, you don't have to have your idea super refined, like both Zenny and Natasha were saying. I went back and looked at my graduate interest letter in my admission application before this call. And basically, as far as I knew back at that time, my undergrad was in anthropology and environmental science. And all I put in my admissions letter for a master's to PhD program was that I, wanted to do archaeology, interested in historic land use in the Southwest, which was a region I had worked before. And so you can be that broad, just kind of know, hey, here's about where I want to work. Here's the topics I'm interested in. And, here's why I'm interested in them. And that, so you don't have to have something super, super specific. So don't worry about that. And as far as research opportunities that I did or internship programs, like Natasha was saying, to kind of help bridge and get some of that experience that you can put in your letter and kind of can help you fine tune your interests and do some networking, is that, so in archaeology, they have field schools. So anytime that you can basically tag along to somebody's research project, whether in a class type setting or, as a volunteer, you can do that. And then I know for some folks, it was the case for me as well with taking care of my grandparents for a while. There was a period of time where I couldn't move really locations to some programs. And so I had to stay local. And it's never a bad idea to reach out, because sometimes, even if it's just volunteer, that can still be really helpful research experience, even if it's not a formal program. So back home for me, there was a summer that, I had to stay close to home, and I asked the local museum, hey, could you use, a volunteer or an intern? And they took me on, and that actually ended up having some great networking connections. And because they were a smaller organization, it helped me. They had more time to kind of give me some career advice and grad school advice, which was helpful. And then other things, if you are interested in, public lands in any way, I know, in the Colorado area, we have so many, public lands. There are internships through like public lands agencies, like the Forest Service and the Park Service, that are for undergrads in a variety of things, ranging from education all the way to kind of more science type stuff, to, human resource type stuff. And so if any of that interests you, feel free to email me. You saw the emails on the slide. I can talk about those. And then national service programs as well. If you're not quite ready to make that jump to grad school just yet, doing a year of service can be great. So I did an AmeriCorps term, and they not only do they give you some funding for school, but they're a great place for kind of doing something, you know, rewarding and building kind of that next step for career.
And I'll just add really quickly to the research experiences I shared. Both of those experiences were paid. So I do want to make that clear for students who watch this later, that there are paid experiences for you to do in the summer. You don't have to do this work for free. And I'll even go as far as to say that these programs, I mean, they paid for my room and board. And so like, it's not just like, we'll just give you a stipend. It's like, well, we'll house you and we'll also provide food and transportation. And so these programs, these research opportunities will really try to make sure that you're like taken care of for a summer, so you don't have to worry about expenses.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Yeah, you definitely can get through all of this without going into really much debt. It's just a matter of going to the programs like Natasha said that'll support you.
Yeah.
I also did AmeriCorps like Caitlin, and the thing I valued about it in between my undergrad and master's, as I feel like it gave me more professionalization skills. So going into my master's program, I had worked out in the world, like in a job with a nonprofit, and so it just increased my ability to navigate kind of bureaucracy, which is part of being a graduate student in some ways. So another plug for AmeriCorps there.
Arturo, you had a thought?
Yeah, just something really, really practical when I'm working with specifically first-gen BIPOC students and so on. One of the things that you absolutely can do and should do, because a lot of students are, like, I don't even have a $50, application fee or $75, and some programs actually want $125, some of the Ivy Leagues and stuff. It's totally fine to just email the different programs you're interested in and see if they could offer an admissions fee waiver. So if we ever get that request, we honor it. There used to be a really great program, but it got canceled, called Project 1000. That was specifically set up for first-gen BIPOC students, where they pay all the application fees. It's one common application. Then they'll send it to like 50 schools or something. But yeah, the students I've been working with this year, all ethnic studies majors and stuff. Most of them first-gen BIPOC students. They followed my advice and they got waivers pretty much everywhere, and now are negotiating different packages and stuff. So it's totally fine to ask. Because a lot of students are like, I want to apply, but I don't even have $100, right? So, and hopefully if a program's serious about recruiting students, especially BIPOC students, they'll figure out a way to kind of waive those application fees. So anyway.
Any other closing thoughts anybody wants to share?
I'll very quickly say, cast a wide net when it comes to applying to graduate schools. Make sure CU is on your list. That's like your baseline. And then you cast a wide net, because when it comes to admissions and when it comes to funding, you're really dealing sometimes with several coincidences. One, are you up to snuff academically and those types of things? But two, you could be a phenomenal student, but that area of research that you're interested in, that faculty member may not have the capacity to take on additional advisees at that time. And so, you're sort of trying to hone in on a coincidence of academic ability. Do they have research in your area? And is that faculty member who's researching in your area accepting students to take under their wing at that time? Then it comes also back down to different programs are going to weight different elements of your application differently. And so spreading a wide net really ensures that you might stand out really well in one application process relative to another.
And I'll just add two quick things about mentorship. So when I was looking for grad schools and specifically PhD programs, I actually met with the mentor that I work now before I applied. So we just chatted over Skype, and I talked to him and learned more about what he did in the program. So I would say if you're interested in applying to a school and you've connected with a mentor, I think it's it's not a bad idea to say, hey, can we talk virtually? And it, you know, solidifies your a way for you to apply or not apply, depending on that too. And then I will say, because the mentorship is really huge in graduate school, a question to, you know, to ask faculty is, you know, what is your mentorship style? And I think that's something that will help you understand, okay, well, this is their mentorship style, and then also gives you time to reflect, okay, well, what am I looking for? Like, what's my mentor, like, what do I am sort of, yeah. So I think that's the brief, I'll add just that, those two things.
Caitlin, did you have one last thing?
I think just bouncing off of Natasha's comment about, you will get a sense as you start to do those outreaches, like Natasha was talking about, of, you know, trying to get to know faculty and people you might want to work with and departments you might want to be a part of. You'll get a sense of, you know, what community is a good fit for you and what community is excited to have you. And yeah, I mean, I definitely felt like there was, and yeah, it is, you know, the interest is a two-way street in terms of you need to be interested in them, but they also should be interested in you because you're a, you know, a good person wanting to do interesting things. And so like I had one program I applied to who, in all of my correspondence with them and outreaches to them, they consistently spelled my name wrong. And I know with Caitlin, sometimes it's hard, but something that basic, like pay attention to that stuff, or, you know, they didn't really have time to want to talk to me. And then that's not the program I ended up at, obviously, but the program I ended up at, and then the one that was, you know, the other one I was considering that both, you know, would have been great. Both of them, like Natasha was saying, the professors, you know, when I said I was interested and kind of talked about, you know, what I wanted to do and learning more about the process, they made phone calls and video chats with me, and they, you know, they took the time to help me feel like, you know, I would be an important part of the community there. And so pay attention to that stuff.
Awesome. So I want to make sure we don't go too far over our time here today, but thank you so much for everyone that's been able to come on, share your expertise, your experience, your ideas. I know it's going to be very, very helpful for students who access this, and help demystify and hopefully encourage them to apply to CU Boulder into our graduate programs and come join our community. Rebecca, did you have any closing thoughts before I shut it down here?
Just to echo the thanks for everyone who spent their time and gave their expertise. And it's really clear to me the heart people have for encouraging our upcoming cohorts of students in graduate studies, and thinking of the current grads and how warm and giving you were of your advice, and the grad placement officers and the faculty at CU Boulder. You know, it's a really special thing, and I hope it encourages students to feel more confident in asking the questions. Like, there's no stupid questions. Like, these are folks who genuinely want to see you succeed and placed and growing into your identity as a scholar who's going to contribute really important new knowledge to the world.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Be well and reach out to us with questions. Thank you.